Hello there, you beautiful soul, and welcome back to another Culture Talks segment with your host, Rebecca Munoz of Cultured Society. I am here with yet another special guest, and it just keeps on getting better and better with these conversations that we are having here on this platform. It is such an honor to have this beautiful woman here in front of me ready to join me in these conversations that are so relevant during this time. I actually started these conversations because I acknowledge that we live in a world filled with people that have so many different life philosophies, experiences, religious beliefs, colors, denominations, backgrounds, all the beautiful things that bring us together and allows us to have conversations and embrace people for who they are, regardless of what they believe, regardless of what they look like, regardless of what age they are or wherever they come from. It's so important, especially during this time where we live in a time where there's a lot of separation and segregation between cultures. Because at the end of the day, we are all one. We are all made in a very similar manner, yet we have a very unique blend of ingredients that create us as we are, right? We all have a very unique perspective and philosophy that can really, bring us together even more so. And so with this, I introduce the beautiful Arlette Willis. So Arlette Lanae Willis, also known as Beautiful Promise across her social media platforms, is a wife of almost 40 years and a mom of three adults and two grandchildren. She currently resides in Tucson, Arizona, where she is fortunate enough to be doing what she loves for a living. Singing, writing, and coaching have meshed together into one beautiful tapestry of life purpose. Arlette is passionate about body, soul, and spirit transformation and helps people get unstuck and see their reason for occupying space on this earth. Arlette is also a published author of a book called Chapter 55. And in this book, she takes excerpts of her journals and combines them into riveting and thought provoking inspirations, prayers, quotes, and conversations with God. And I want to share how Arlette and I became, friends and how we meshed together and how we were able to, combine our life purpose. I actually lived in Arizona for before 2020, the last 5.5 years, and I had the opportunity to meet people from so many different walks of life. And Arlette and I had the opportunity to meet through a mutual friend. And it just is so amazing how you can meet people in all these different arenas and platforms, and you can come together and have so much in common. And I am just so grateful for Arlette because she is such a bright light, and we've had the opportunity to commune. We have had the opportunity, I've actually seen her perform so many times and share her book with me and a lot of people that she's come across. And I'm just so blessed by her, and I'm so honored to have her in this space today. So welcome, Arlette.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I am enjoying having our space together, whether it's like this or over the phone. It's always a pleasure, and I always have a great takeaway whenever we have conversations. So, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's such an honor to have such a beautiful person like you that has such a great purpose. And,
Thank you.
we have so much in common, even though there is a bit of an age difference. But I just feel like,
Yes.
your experiences in life, and even just being a mom and a wife, and all of the beautiful artistry gifts that you have, that you really bring a lot of value to me. And I honor that, I respect that, and I'm just so grateful that God has blessed me with your presence.
Thank
So
you.
with this, let's go ahead and get started. And as you know, if you have been watching or if you're new to these conversations, I have come up with a series of questions that are the same across the board for every single panel of guests that I bring on to these conversations. And what's really interesting is that every conversation, although it's the same questions, have been so different and so unique. And that's the whole purpose of these conversations, is to bring you value and to understand that even though we are so uniquely designed, we can again come together and have these conversations and add value to each other, inspire each other, and just allow, space for you to be who you are, and to know that you also have a purpose and that you are uniquely designed and that you have a space here on this planet to give
Mm.
so much. So, with this being said, Arlette, what is your life's philosophy?
Wow. When I looked at that question, I really didn't think about it, but I'll say this because what comes to my heart just just pretty much organically is that when I lay down at night at the end of every day, my philosophy is that I lay down in peace. And that laying down in peace means that I have lived and spoken my truth every single day. And so that's really important to me that I haven't, been deceptive in any type of way, that I've led my life every single day with love and gratitude.
Mm, isn't that
Mhm.
amazing to be able to go to bed and have that peace inside of you, knowing that you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing when it comes to what we can, right, do? Because we're not here to do
Absolutely.
everything. We're not here to
Yeah.
do everything, but we're here to contribute. And when we're doing it with peace and honor and integrity, that's
Mhm.
all. That's all we really need. And how do you feel like
Yeah.
philosophy has evolved over the years?
Well, I would say with one simple word, I would use grace. And I would say that that philosophy has evolved with a lot of grace, really learning how to not only extend grace to myself, but learning how to extend grace to other people that are going through the same or even different paths of life. There are other people that are going through transformation, and they need that extension of grace. And
Mm,
as I said in the bio part, my the passion that I have for transformation is not just what happens on the outside, but it's what's going on the inside. There's an inner work that has to take place, or you can change the outside, or it won't even matter if the inside has not changed. So I would say that the way it has evolved for me is that word grace, being able to extend that to myself and to other people. Because, like you said, we're not here to do everything, and sometimes we can think that we're here to do everything, and sometimes other people think we're here to do everything, so they'll kind of lean into you and pretty much suck the life out of you if you don't know how to set proper boundaries. And so yeah, that's really important, so I would say grace.
you know what? And grace is one of the most difficult ones to extend to ourselves,
Oh
especially as
yeah.
women, because we have these high expectations. And it's not just women. I think that humanity as a whole, we have these unrealistic expectations sometimes. And when we don't meet those expectations, we tend to just be really hard on ourselves, and
Hmm.
we don't really give ourselves the love that oftentimes we're trying to give to other people. But if we don't do that for ourselves first,
Exactly.
we don't have the room to give it to other people.
That's so true. That's so true. And sometimes, we try to pour from not just even a half full glass, but often from an empty place. And trying to pour from that place, it's not beneficial. It's not beneficial to us, nor is it beneficial to the person that we're trying to do. We do ourselves as well as the person a disservice when we're trying to pour from an empty place. So it's best, and I've learned that over the years how to really fill myself up first. It hasn't always been easy because a lot of times you're looking at the people that are kind of pulling on you, and you're like, okay, well, they need this and they need that and they need the other. And just, I would say, maybe within the last 3 years, and especially with the last year with the pandemic, I've really learned to take the time out, to fill myself up and to give myself what I need um, so that I can be effective for the people that I'm here to serve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have to learn to do that. We have to learn to give to ourselves first because like we think, oh, we're here to serve, we're here to give back, we're here, but yes, we are here to do that. But when we're doing it from an empty vessel, oftentimes we'll end up having resentment. We'll
Oh,
people's faces that they're not
yes,
doing the same thing, they're not reciprocating. And when we're giving, we need to be giving from a selfless place, but we can't do that if we haven't been fueling our own vessel first. I'm so
absolutely.
glad. I'm so glad that you said that. I'm so glad that you said that. And you definitely have some maturity on you, and you also have children and you
Yes.
have a husband. So how long did it take you to really recognize that you needed to do that for yourself
Oh
first?
my gosh. It's been a lot. I'm telling you, it's just like really been recently that I have said, okay, in order to better serve my family, I have to take out the time for myself. And even sometimes, like I'm by nature, I am a nurturer. I'm a nurturer, and I love to, like take care of my family. And I love to help them when I see different things happening with them. It's like in advance I can see the answer for it. But what I had to learn was to let go, even though I may feel like I can help you in that area. If they're not ready for that help, I had to learn how to step back. So I would say again, like in the last 3 years, things have really shifted for me, like really, really shifted to the point where my whole self-love game has just like really been taken to another level. And that doesn't mean that I've lost any love or care for them. It's just that the whole priority has shifted to I have to do this in order to be the best that I need to be, even for you. And so I would say within the last 3 years that shifted like tremendously.
And you know what's so interesting, because you said this earlier about how we can change our physical body, but if you don't change the internal body, nothing really is going to change. And oftentimes, when with self-love practices, we think that going to the gym and even like losing the weight, but oftentimes it's more for superficial reasons, right? We
Absolutely.
want to look good externally, but we're dying inside.
Yeah.
And the real transformation happens when you change your mind about what transformation really means, because
Yes.
we are holistic beings, we're mind, body, and soul. And so, in order for there to be a sustainable transformation, we definitely have to change what's going on inside of us in order for the external to catch up.
Absolutely. I found that that during like when the pandemic hit, it's so many things that shifted and so many things that changed. And in the beginning, I didn't see those things as positive things because there was a lot happening in my world, in my family, and even with family back home that I couldn't get to. Different people that were, just getting sick and experiencing what this whole pandemic brought about. But what I found for myself is that even as far as transformation is concerned, I had been living what I would call a physically transformed life probably for about a good 7 years straight, where I was just like, I was going and nothing was stopping me. But when the pandemic hit, what I found is that I had not conquered that emotional stress eating. And
Mhm.
I really thought that I had, but I really had not done the inner work to get rid of. Because when you're relying on food for comfort and for stress, what happens is your your mind is pretty much just in it's in a place of, okay, what can I do to relieve what I'm feeling right now?
Yes.
And we don't think of stress eating being an issue for the most part, especially if you've grown up in that type of environment where this is what you see exampled. The people around you are not saying, this is what I'm doing, that I'm stress eating, but this is a result of what they're experiencing. And that's the only way that they've known how to handle it.
Right.
So with me, when that came, when the whole year came up, I found myself, you know, well, for me, it's crunchy stuff. So anything that was, crunchy, a cracker, a chip, anything that was crunchy, I pretty much found myself eating. And until, and I did, I put back on weight, and I had to start dealing with, okay, what is a healthy and a sustainable way that
Mhm.
I can deal with areas of stress. And
Yes.
even though I have always been one that have journaled and had my time of, prayer and have exercised, those were things that I done, like you were saying, when you're exercising, you're doing it for a reason. You're doing it to get a result, but you're not doing it to actually heal yourself, from your body and your soul and your spirit. And so I would say, that the realization of that stress was very different for me, and I found myself getting back to the place of eating like that. But I came to the point where I said, okay, you know what? I got to get in a quiet place. I got to get in a place that's going to, serve me, and serve me in the way of not eating when I feel like I need comfort. And so I resorted to my meditation, but it was just on a whole different level where it was literally transforming the inside of me.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And it's so interesting because that similar shift happened for me, although I recognize that mind body soul transformation does happen to have to happen internally. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about that same thing, the emotional eating, because
Yeah.
oftentimes we don't, in our society especially, food is so prominent, right? Like,
Yes.
eat for everything, whether we're
Yes.
sad, whether we're happy, whether we're communing with people, whether we're like it's food revolves, I literally, like, our life revolves around food. There
Yes.
are times when we're like trying to maybe stop drinking or stop doing other things that are like, it's evident like those things are doing damage to our body. But you know, statistically in 2019,
Yeah.
350,000 people died of obesity. And that's
Wow.
something that is talked about.
Yeah.
And obesity related, diseases come from the lifestyles that we live, the foods that
Yes.
we eat. And so
Hmm.
if we don't get a grip on our emotions, oftentimes we're not going to really understand why our bodies are not functioning the way that they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Food is either healing us or killing us.
Absolutely. That is so true.
And so it's so important for us to get a grip on our emotions. And I'm right there with you because that happened to me in 2020 where I released a lot of my emotional weight. And that helped me really understand, like, okay, I really need to listen to my body. I need to pay attention to what I'm putting into my mouth and to understand that concept that everything
Hmm.
that I'm putting into my mouth is either healing me or killing me. And that's
Yes.
personal choice.
Hmm.
That's a personal choice. I'm so glad you said that, Arlette. And it's so great to get to that space where you understand your body well enough to make those changes and to be real with yourself, to take
Yeah.
responsibility.
To be real, and let me add, to be kind.
Yes.
To be kind, and that's another thing that I begin to implement like never before. Just, speaking kindly to myself and to my body, and again extending that grace to myself, because one thing that I had to just, face the fact that during that time of getting back to the snacking food, and by the way, I will say that it wasn't like necessarily unhealthy snacking food. It was healthy snacking food, but if you don't have a boundary, for that healthy snacking food, it can be just as unhealthy. But I told myself, I say, you know what, I have enjoyed the things that I have been eating. And also I have been vegan for 7 years, and I found myself kind of tapping back into some of the animal products here and there, giving myself a break. And honestly, at the end of the day, Rebecca, I realized that I needed that break. And I needed that break to be able to say, this is not something that I really need. So now I've been like, it's like I started my journey all over, but I started it from the foundation this time, from the foundation of what, not so much, oh, this is a trend, everybody's doing this, or whatever, but how does this make you feel at the end of the day? you
Abs-
know and so with that, I get that was extending myself grace, and not being so hard on myself to say, oh, you shouldn't have had that piece of bacon. Oh, I enjoyed that piece of bacon. Or I want a sandwich, so I'm going to have a piece of bread. So it was all of those things, being just truthful with myself about where I was. And that type of love, when you extend that type of love to yourself, you can begin to see the physical outer weight naturally falling off when you accept and love yourself right where you are,
Mm.
without that 20 pounds being gone, but right there. And so, yeah.
Oh, yes, that's so real. That's so real. And it's interesting because when you end up going back to old ways of being, it's almost as though like your body's saying, you know what? Like, this is why I changed in the first place. And you always
Exactly.
have to have that reminder, because I'm right there with you. I've actually lived plant-based for over 7 years now, but I've been vegan for 3.5.
Hmm.
And I found myself like dabbling a little bit with going back to non-vegan stuff, and it just doesn't feel right to me. But
Exactly.
you've developed that mindset, because in order for you to have sustainable results, you need to
Yes.
have consistency. You need to be able to do it, throughout a long period of time. And that's really where it sticks, versus you always going back to these like fat.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it is very relevant, especially with a lot of people now, because we are isolated. We're in a space where we're experiencing so much change, and oftentimes we revert back to just emotional eating.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm really glad that you said that, and that has really clicked for you around this time.
Yeah.
How would you say that your circle of influence has impacted the way that you live and think about life today?
Oh my gosh. I would say, well, first of all, my first circle of influence are my parents and the elders in my family, and the strong principles that they laid down, not only in things that they said to us as kids growing up, but just how they live their lives, is what has impacted me so great. And I find myself teaching those things to my kids, like the importance of family, the value of being together as a family and supporting one another as a family, and allowing one another to live their truth and to speak their truth without criticism and judgment. And those are some of the things that my parents taught us. And now I mean, I've always been really big into history, and history of, yeah, where did I come from, but history, and also understanding, like, my grandparents and my great grandparents, and listening to the stories that were told to us by our parents of this is how your grandmother was, or this is how your grandfather was. And what that did for me, Rebecca, is it really helped me to understand me, because sometimes we can have different behavioral patterns, different things that we're doing that we don't understand where we got it from. Sometimes we may not see that that was inside of our parents or something. But when we have a history, of our forefathers, and have an understanding of what happened with them, it can help us to really fight off things that may not be so positive, a behavior that might not be as positive, when we understand where it came from and why it was there. So I would say that, my parents and, elders were my first influence of different principles of just how to treat one another, how to love one another, how to interact with people, how to be business minded people, and how to save money. All of these things came, right out of my family. So I found myself, of course, later in life being drawn to those same like-minded people. So I would say that those are the people that have influenced my life, and it still impacts me till today.
That's beautiful, especially when you come from a very strong foundation that lays, right, the bricks of what
Yes.
to how we need to live even through our evolution, because we're a constant evolution. I'm sure even before 2020, you're not the person that you are today. um and it's constantly changing, even when we're maturing and we've experienced. And you've been a wife for 40, over 40 years, or now 40
It'll
years,
be it'll be 40 in June.
and that's an
It'll be 40
accomplishment
years.
in itself.
Yes.
That's an
Yes, it is.
accomplishment in itself. And then you
Yeah.
have kids already. So
Yes. They are for real grown men and a grown woman, and two grandchildren. They're 10 and 5.
wow. Wow.
Hmm.
And so do you believe that that foundation that your parents laid for you allowed you to go through your evolution to be able to choose your circle of influence wisely? Because your parents, you can't, you really necessarily, like, as a soul, you do choose the vessel, but even when you go through your human experience, you don't understand that. So we think that we really don't choose the vessels that we come through. But so our parents are our parents, but as you evolve and you go through your journey, you do get to choose who you surround yourself with and who you're
Yes.
influenced by. So how has that changed over the years?
I would say, in the early years, when I didn't know that I had a choice, and I was in certain environments, whether it was in school or in church or at a job, regardless to those environments, I felt like, those were people that I had to be around. And especially, I would say, especially in church, and in ways, sometimes I felt like I didn't really have a choice. I'm around these people and this is what we do. And so, that's how it is. And I'm not saying that to say that those were necessarily bad people or anything like that. But I would say that, in every environment or institution that I've been in, I was around people that I don't feel like I would have chosen to be around, you know? But now I don't feel like that I don't have a choice. I feel like I definitely have a choice of who I'm around, who I surround myself with, who I, give my energy to. And whereas I used to give myself pretty much to anybody, like I felt like I needed it. I don't feel like that's why I'm here anymore. And I think it's like when you learn your purpose, when you understand, what you're here for, then you will make different decisions. You'll make different decisions about even about, um, jobs. I've had job offers even recently that I've said no to because it was not the fit that I know I need right now in my life. And I'm not the same person that I was 5 years ago, 3 years ago, not even 1 year ago. I'm a totally different person. And I love who I see. I love who, I'm becoming. I feel like I'm so much closer now to what I was originally designed to be and who I'm originally designed to be. And so and that's with whatever other people may even consider as flaws. I'm not saying that to say what other people consider as perfection, because I don't believe in that anyway. But the bottom line is I'm happy and I'm comfortable with who I'm becoming every day. And so I feel like I do have choices. I feel like, and I wrote this. I believe this might be one of the quotes in my book, but it's like the day that you feel that you don't have a choice is the day that death begins to set in,
Mm,
and that is the truth. When we live um, in an environment, whether that environment is your home, your school, your job, your church, whatever the environment may be, if that is a controlled environment and you feel as a human being that God has given free choice to, that you don't have a choice and that you don't have freedom, death will set in.
mm. That is so important. That is so important to accept as your truth because every single person, although it may not seem like it,
Mhm.
especially in the days that we're living in now, I mean, it doesn't matter what's going out in the world, especially what's given to us from the media, right? But
Yeah,
our world is in the vicinities of our energetic space,
absolutely.
right? So we get to choose how we live in that energetic space. And
Yeah.
if we are surrounded by people that we feel anxious, that we are stressed, if we're
Yeah.
in jobs that are not good for our well being, if we're
Mhm.
in toxic relationships, like that really at the end of the day is a choice. And when we embrace that as our truth, because it hasn't always been like that for me either. And I know that it hasn't been like that for you, where we're always, I know for myself, I was a yes and a people pleaser. Like,
Yes.
am and a pleaser. And so I ended up putting myself in situations where I always felt so overwhelmed and stressed out and anxious. And when
Mhm.
I started to remove myself from those environments, I started to feel a difference,
Yes. Yes.
recognizing that
Y-
it was a
Yeah.
choice.
Yep. And when I say I want to be, clear, when I say that death sets in, that doesn't always mean that you physically leave this body, but it does mean the death of who you are as a person. Your light goes out. It dims and you're not who you were, the vibrant, beautiful bright light that you were intended to be. You can't be that if you don't, exercise that freedom that you have.
Yes, yes. And you know what? That spiritual death is almost just as bad as the physical death. I'm like, who wants
Yes,
to live like that? You know what I mean? Who wants
right.
to live like that? Because life is so worth living for. And when we know ourselves and
Yes.
when we choose to surround ourselves with people that are empowered and
Hmm.
aligned, it changes the game. It really
Yes, for
does.
sure.
Totally. Well, how do you believe that your line of work infects our society with positivity?
Oh my goodness. Well, whether people realize it and understand it or not, everybody needs transformation in one area or another of their lives. And so whether that's okay, so I'll say the 6 areas that I've been focused on maybe for the last 2.5 or 3 years has been mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially,
Mm.
and wait, what's the sixth one? Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, and educationally.
Yes.
And so those are the 6 areas that I have been focused on. And right now, all of those areas is interesting. I had, been in, and kind of delved into and did work in those areas, except for the educational part. And I began to tell myself the story. And see, here's where transformation takes place. I began to tell myself the story on the inside. Well, I'm getting to be too old to go to school and this, that, and the other. And I don't need to do that. But when I tell you that my mind has totally transformed from that, because it's not necessarily like even going into an institution of school. I mean, the way that we live right now, you can get on your computer and be fully indulged in school, which I am. And so I feel like people need transformation, whether they realize it or not. And I'm not the one to go and tell somebody you need transformation. But when people come in your space, those of us who are influencers, of us who are healers and nurturers, when someone comes into your space, what you provide and what I provide is light.
Mhm.
And any place in them that may be dark, and that dark only means a place of maybe ignorance, maybe something that they don't know yet. The light is shined in that area. And so they can see that they may need some help.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like, that for me, that's how it's happened. Just through simple, conversations with people, they'll say, "Wow, I never thought of it like that." Or, "Wow, that's something that I need." Or and I'm not even trying to, promote that, but it's just a regular conversation where they may see and understand that it's something of a nature of transformation is lacking. And like I said, that could be something as simple as changing your money story, changing, what you feel and how you grew up as far as finances are concerned. And it could be something that could be blocking you from getting to the next level, in that area. And so, that's how I feel that, the world and people are impacted by what I'm doing as far as transformation is concerned. I help people to get unstuck, and I know how to do that work because I do the work for myself.
Yes. And that's a beautiful thing because whenever we are doing, especially this type of work where it is so personal, it is important for us to get aligned with what we're teaching.
Yeah,
And we can't really elevates people's perspectives if we are not doing the work within ourselves, we're not
yeah,
living the work that we teach. And
yes,
that's where transformation really happens, is
mhm,
where we can be a prime example of what that transformation that we're talking about looks like.
yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. That's so relevant now because oftentimes the work that is done, it especially when it comes to physical transformation, it can
Yeah,
be a lot of people want to lose weight for just to look good, right? But there it's more than that. It goes
yeah,
deeper. It
yeah,
goes deeper than that.
yeah. And for the people that I work with, um, I I always let them know that this is not just about, the physical portion. If we make it about the physical portion, it won't be sustainable. If we
Mhm.
make it about the physical portion, then, the weight that you come into this conversation with, years down the road, you'll pick it up again if the inner transformation has not taken place, if the changes that need to be made. And that's the thing that I had to learn for myself. Oh God, like in the earlier years when I first started working on my physical self, and there was a definite need to do that. But when I first started working on my physical self, it was all about, okay, let me, And I would never been a gym rat, so to speak, but I did like going outdoors and, walking slash jogging, doing the stairs in different places. But when I began to make the physical transformation, what I found is that in my mind, I still had the same thoughts about food. And I knew that that was going to have to change. I mean, I could like, because in our culture, there's a certain way, and in everyone's culture, there's a certain way that you grow up that you eat. And just for instance, there was if we had biscuits for breakfast, there wasn't just biscuits and egg and bacon and sausage. I mean, just you had some grits on the side or some type of hot cereal also. So when I look back at the way that I was raised to eat and as opposed to how I eat now, it's totally different. I can never imagine myself having an egg without a piece of bacon or a sausage and a piece of bread. It's like all of that goes together. So, in order to heal that, I had to educate myself and understand that these things don't all need to be put together. And just because that was the way that I was raised doesn't mean that that's what's beneficial for longevity. And so I had to just begin to switch things around. But what I had to do, Rebecca, was go to the root. Okay, so where did this come from? Yeah, this is how my family cooked and everything like this. But in every child, there's an innate desire to please their parents.
Yes.
And so when you think about, I know in my family, my parents said, "Oh, you're not getting up from the table till you finish all the food on your plate." And so that starts really an unhealthy relationship with food because you feel like you have to finish everything on your plate. And
Yes.
so even if what's put on your plate is too much for you, you need to stuff yourself to complete that plate. And you want to please your parents. So, I used to finish my food and go to my parents and show them my belly and say, I ate all my food, but my parents didn't know because that's what they were taught. And so it's transformation is really about going to the root and
Yes.
understanding why you feel the way you feel, why you think the way you think. Like I said, whether it's food, whether it's money, whether it's in your relationship, how you interact with your spouse, all of that is taught to us, not and it's learned behavior.
It is.
But there is a root to all of it. And if you want to thrive, not just survive in your life,
Yes.
and in your relationships, then you got to go to the root. And it's not easy going to the root of issues. It's like you have a plant and you take a sharp instrument to begin to move around the plant. You may have some leaves that's going to die off because you hit the root. But if you nourish it and if you give it the love and the care that it needs, it's going to come back up a beautiful green plant. But that doesn't mean it hasn't gotten hurt in the process. And so yeah, everybody needs transformation.
Oh, yeah. You are preaching today, Arlette. You are preaching today, sister friend. It's so true. And you know what? We live in a conditioned society where
Yeah.
these behaviors are taught, but we don't unlearn them because it's something that's normal, right? And it really does take that getting tired of being sick and tired where you start to really think for yourself and start to
Mhm.
listen to your body because I mean, I wasn't taught this. I come from a very similar culture as you,
Mhm.
where we're not taught that food is what we talked about, where it's either healing you or killing you. We're
Yes.
basically taught whatever or given whatever we have because that's what we have, right?
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until later on in my life that I started to realize that, especially after being sick for so long, like I lived in a very sickly body. And they say that when the student is ready, the teacher will show up.
Yes.
And so when you're ready to really make these changes, these things start to make sense for you, and you're able to then kind of peel back the layers. We're like onions, right?
Yeah,
We have to peel back the layers to be able to get to that root, that core foundation of where it all started. And then we can start to pick it apart, and we can start to almost do a process of elimination. But that is a process, and we need to give ourselves grace during that process, because we didn't get to that place that we hate overnight.
exactly. And the bottom line is we I can't even say that I hated the journey,
Hmm.
because the journey was beautiful. My
Yeah.
family, when we came together, not just my immediate family, but my extended family with my cousins and grandparents, aunts, and uncles, when we came together, it was always around food.
Mhm.
So, food translated happiness and family and joy to me. So, when I felt or would feel sad, it was natural to resort to what would make me happy. And what would make me happy was the food that I enjoyed around my parents. So it wasn't that I hated the journey, but again, that educational portion to understand this is not beneficial to you. This is not beneficial to, your parents. And so along the way, when my dad had passed on, but my mom was still around when I first started making my transformation. And she used to laugh, and she might be on the phone talking to somebody, and they'd say, "Well, what's Arlette doing?" And she says, "Oh, she's in the kitchen cooking some trees and some rocks or whatever, something she done got probably from outside." And she would make a joke about it. But I got an opportunity to really, to help my mom, in her last days, as far as transforming her mind about food. She would have never had a pot of greens without ham hocks and some other kind of meat in it. That's just not the way that we were. And so, but she learned to enjoy it without the meat. And I'm not here to tell people that you don't need to do meat. People need to do what they feel convinced to do. So I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, for me, I know that it has not been beneficial in the journey that I'm in now.
Yes. And that goes to show that we can change our narrative at any time, because oftentimes we think that we have to stay in that space because genetically that's the way that we were made, right? To
Yeah.
those conditionings and to live that way that our culture is living, but we don't. We can change our narrative at any given time, and everybody's so uniquely designed, with our own ways that we're supposed, like, our life is supposed to unfold. So for me, like, it's not natural either that
Yeah.
our culture, like, in our culture, there's not a lot of vegans, right?
Yes.
And that was something that I was being called to do too. So you do have to really do what your body is asking you to do, and it comes in different seasons.
Yeah.
Do you believe that your work that you do every day is aligned with your higher calling and purpose?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What I'm doing every single day, and not even just well, now that we're a bit more restricted, so we're not out as much, but I'm finding that people are still finding ways to reach out, and I'm still able to share not only health, but to share healing and to share transformation. To help people to get to a different mindset, and especially with what we're dealing with in the world now, because people feel like, this is huge, but I'm going to say it anyway because I believe it. But people feel like that they have no control, over things that are happening, and of course you don't have control with other people. But here's where I feel that we do have control, and this may be controversial to some people, but this is what I believe. I believe that our thoughts have has formed the world as we know it right now. And until we take personal responsibility then we'll keep experiencing a lot of the things that we're experiencing. I really believe that. I mean, I feel like there's no way that God could have created us in his likeness and in his image. And, we have no power and we have no authority and we have no say so in what's going down. I just don't believe that. To me, that wouldn't even be a wise thing to do. As a creator. You know what I'm saying? But I believe that we have been given power, we've been given authority, we've been given a mind to think and to create and to bring into existence the beautiful life that we say we want. And I think because we don't have that full understanding, then it's easy for us to kind of toss the ball, back into the hands of whoever, the creator or whoever, and say, oh, well, this is not God's will, or, this is not for me to do, or I don't have power and control over that. Yeah. At some point, there were thoughts that we probably all have had that does not lend to the beauty of this earth right now. And so, it's just important to take responsibility and say, yeah, well, you know what? I thought this way or I thought that way, whether it could have been as far as racism, it could be anything. It could be anything that we might have had certain thoughts about that we nurtured those thoughts.
Right.
And we are creative beings. So
Yes.
what we think and what we speak matters. And
Yes.
so we speak into existence, whether it manifests in that moment or not. It may be 10 years down the road. That's something that we spoke in our own personal lives, manifest. And so that doesn't only work with things that we want, that works with things that we don't want. So we have to be careful and we have to be good stewards over our minds, over the things that we let in, over the things that we're thinking and nurturing, and over the things that we speak, because we do have power and we do have authority. And
Oh,
when we speak, the things that we speak are gonna come into manifestation, whether we like it or not.
absolutely. And it reminds me of the scripture, life and death is in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. And it's
Yes,
so real because what we're thinking, we're doing, right? We're taking action, and it's all connected. And so it's
yeah,
important that we're not only feeding our bodies with good nutrition that we're eating, but
yeah,
good substance food that we're thinking and we're speaking and we're surrounded by. It all impacts us
yes, yes. That is so true.
so much. And I'm glad that it's even coming from you, Arlette, because we both are women that come from cultures that are very oppressed.
Mhm.
And for you to say that it's a personal responsibility to not live that way, to not live in that conditioned way, and to have a freedom mindset, and to recognize that we are designers and architects of our own life. We are
Yes,
the we are conscious creators, and we are created in the image of God. Therefore, God has given us that power to be free
yes,
individuals.
absolutely, absolutely.
That is so true, and it's so relevant, and I'm so glad that you said it. How do you stay relevant, unique, and true to who you are as a person
Wow.
now?
Again, I would say, um, by feeding myself the necessary nourishment that need for my mind and for my body, for my spirit. Um, I exercise. I love journaling. I think journaling is a road and the pathway that, leads to really being able to understand who you are. You can't understand who you are if you don't sit and spend time with yourself. and in this microwave society where everything is so quick and everybody needs to be up and making it happen and hustling and grinding and all of this stuff, I'm surrendering. I'm in surrender while all of this other stuff is going on around me. And it took me a while to get to that place of surrender. And when I say that, understanding that everything is as it should be right at this moment, and when I yield to that, then I can create and produce other thoughts that will help me to move forward even more into who I am. So staying relevant means getting up and spending that personal time, getting time in prayer and in meditation and in working out, uh, and feeding myself from a nutritional standpoint as well as a spiritual standpoint.
And that goes into the implement, like the routines and the rituals that you do to stay grounded. Is that
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So those are, and I mean, yeah, I would say that for sure because staying grounded, means that you do have to have a certain routine. You do have to have, rituals that have worked and have been tried, have been tested, things that, work to keep you grounded. And so, yeah, those are all things that I do to stay in that place.
is that something that you've done consistently for a very long time? The writing and the prayers and the meditations and stuff that you talk about even in your book.
Yeah, I would say that I've always loved writing, even as a little girl. But I would say consistently, I've kept a journal with my first child. He is he's 38 now.
Wow.
And so after he was born was when I really started journaling like every single day. And when I started having my kids, because I wanted to, maintain my personal time, I would get up extra early in the morning. So I'm still an early riser. Sometimes I'm still up at 4:30 in the morning so that I can have the time to spend in quiet time, in journaling, then working out. And then it would be time for the kids to get up and time to, help my husband get ready at that time for work. And yeah, so I really did have to have a schedule because I mean, when Mark and I first got married, it's funny, but I used to fix homemade biscuits every single morning before he went to work. Homemade biscuits, and so that took me getting up at a certain time, so I can make sure that everything was in place. So yeah, I did have. So it's been over 38 years that I've been, doing a schedule.
And so has it evolved even through the years of you being married to Mark? Because I'm sure having kids, three children, and a husband can be really challenging. And I know I've spoken to a lot of moms that have a really difficult time having that routine because things are constantly changing. I mean, it's changing, that's inevitable, but
Yeah,
has it always been consistent even through the birth of your three children and through the evolution of your marriage with Mark?
pretty much. Yeah, I would say at different times I had to make a couple of switches. Like even when I went to school for cosmetology, I had to do things a little bit different. But some things for me were just non-negotiables. And so, like when I was in school and I had to be, at school at 8 in the morning, then that meant I just needed to get up earlier. And at that time, I had that level of discipline. I would get up earlier, and I wasn't as much into like a lot of working out, but I would walk. And I
Mhm.
always made sure did some dancing and stuff like that because that's what I kind of grew up with. So, yeah, I would say that those things were pretty much, the same. It wasn't easy, but I did, maintain that schedule. And I had when I would oh wow, when I would get out of school, I would come home from school and I had I had a room in my home that Mark had kind of built for me to do hair and everything. And so I would come home and I had a few minutes to get something to eat, and I was preparing. So what they're doing nowadays as far as the prep, I was doing way back then, prepping food and stuff. But I would come home and get the kids, kind of get them settled, and I would start doing hair. And that was the way that, I worked and paid my way through cosmetology school. And after that, I had my own salon. So yeah, it's been an evolving thing over the years. But one thing that I never gave up was that personal space that I needed to have in the morning to, you know, of quiet time and writing and praying.
Yes, and that's so important because our schedules are constantly shifting. I mean, I know that I've gone through a lot of different changes like that too. Although I don't have children, but there was a point in time where I was managing other people's households and other people's children.
Yes.
it it's when you have all of these responsibilities, and I think that every single person that come across that will come through these doors has a lot of responsibilities that they have to take care of, but at the end of the day your number one priority should always be
Yeah. Yeah.
at the beginning of the call. We cannot pour out that love, that unconditional love, right, from
Yes.
an vessel, and we need to nurture our own vessel first before we can give to others so freely.
Yes.
That's beautiful, Arlette. What
Thank you.
words of wisdom would you give to those seeking a deeper understanding of themselves?
Wow. Well, part of what I said a few minutes ago was uh, to understand yourself, you have to spend time. It's just like with any relationship that you want to grow and you want to build, you have to spend time to get to know one another. And I think for the most part, we're not taught, as humankind, human beings, that we need to get to know ourselves. And so we live on in this place outside of ourselves for a lot of our lives until we discover that we don't even know who we are. And
Yes.
so I would say, you know, um, getting an understanding of, who you are, what you love and what you hate, what you're going to stand for, what's going to be a non-negotiable in your life,
Mhm.
and I feel like when you begin to understand those things, then the people who come into your life and even go out of your life, it can be seamless. But a lot of times, the reason that there's that friction there is because we don't know ourselves, because we haven't taken out the time to learn who we are. And often, again, that's because we haven't been taught that we need to understand who we are. It's been all about what other people need, what you need to do this for that person, you need to do this on your job, you need to do this in school. So while you're doing all of this, that's why the morning time for me was non-negotiable, because I needed to be able to understand what my next move was. That's where I got instruction from. Spending that quiet time in the morning was where my answers came, for the next day or the next year, or. And so, but learning who you are just personally as a person at the root, at the core of your being, you have to take out the time. And I'll tell you that is, I'm saying it, and it's easy for me to say it because it's something that I've been practicing over the years. But the more that I interact with people, I find how uncomfortable they are with themselves. So you can go into their environment, and an example may be that their TV is always going, and they're like, I can't, be without the TV, the music or something on. How come? Because when you're quiet, you can hear from you. You can hear from God. You can understand what it is that you're supposed to be doing in life. And if there's always noise going on, you will never be able to tap in.
I don't have anything to say. No, that is so real. That is so real because we do we live in a society that's very distracted by noise outside of us. And 2020 was very uncomfortable for a lot of people because we kind of had no choice but to go inward because
Yeah.
we were isolated. And that is a very uncomfortable thing for somebody who's not used to personal growth and
Mm-hmm.
has to look at themselves in the mirror. But I will tell you that although it's very uncomfortable, when you stick to the process and you recognize that it's a never ending evolution and that you can embrace it and you can love it even through the uncertainty, because
Yes.
we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
That's
I
right.
mean, we don't even know if we're going to be here the rest of this day, right? Like
Yes.
we never know. So why not spend the time getting to know yourself and really understanding your own needs
Mm-hmm.
instead of having that desire to be validated by someone outside of you or having that codependency, because it's always great to have that. Why, which is why I bring up the circle of influence, because we are constantly influenced by people, but we can be that influence that people need in
Yes.
order for us to have that sustainable transformation and that knowing of who we are.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So important. It's so important. Oh my gosh, Arlette, literally, you have given us so many nuggets to take away, because and these conversations are so important, because although we don't have to necessarily adopt people's belief systems or the way that they do things, but it is great to be encouraged and to understand the process, and that everybody's process is so different, but
Yes.
yet we can take those little nuggets, right?
Nuggets. Yes.
And we can implement it into our own life and what works in our own life, so that our purpose,
Mm-hmm.
our just our higher calling can be unfolded naturally and with so much more ease.
Yes. Absolutely.
Well, do you have any finishing statements, my beautiful Arlette?
No, I think we pretty much hit it all. I think that well, we hit what we needed to hit for this
Absolutely.
session, and I think that it was I think that it's very good.
Yes, yes, I agree with you. And I am so grateful and honored that you took the time out of your day. I know that you're super busy to be here with us today, because, again, these conversations are so important.
Mm.
And just know that to the person, to the beautiful soul that is going to join this conversation, whether it be today, tomorrow, next year, 10 years from now, that you're inspired and you're blessed and you are not necessarily motivated, because I sometimes feel like motivation doesn't last very long,
It
but
doesn't.
that that you are definitely encouraged to continue on your path and to recognize that where you are right now, there's no accident, and that you're not in the wrong place. You're actually exactly where you need to be in order for you to move forward. And remember that yesterday is history, it's no longer here. This morning, history no longer here. The only thing that exists is what's happening right now in this present
Yes.
minute. And that when you can embrace that, and that when you can accept yourself for who you are and for who you're becoming every single day, you have the ability to be more in tune with what it is that you need, so that the trajectory of your life can unfold again with so much ease. So I am sending you so much love and light today, and we will see you soon. Peace.
Yes. Peace.